Good afternoon. My name is Attorney Pegah Rahgozar. I'm located here in Houston, Texas, currently live with you guys here at the Rahgozar Law Firm, where we practice immigration law almost exclusively. And so the reason for today's live presentation is basically to describe the two new memos that Homeland Security has just published on Friday. And they basically are directives on the enforcement priorities and what essentially Trump and his administration finds that need to be, essentially regarding immigration laws that are currently enforced. They want to have strict policies in place. And basically these memos are currently rescinding some of the previous ICE directives that we have, specifically the November 2014 memorandum that regards apprehension, detention, and removal and certain enforcement priorities that before under Obama we basically had categories of enforcement. Now it's basically a free-for-all. And some of the things discussed in these memos are basically they're going to violate due process of law for sure for individuals in these situations. They're going to end longstanding protections for children, so unaccompanied minors who have entered the U.S. alone, arriving at the port of entries. Those are going to be picked up, and their parents probably penalized for them that are seeking to reunite with their children. Basically, those individuals who have been identified as unaccompanied alien childs, they are going to be redefined, and they're going to be part of civil and criminal enforcements to their parents especially, but they're also going to be actually detained. There's also going to be heavy expansion of detentions, which is going to include additional DHS officers that will be apprehending individuals who are going to arrive at any port of entry. So before, when individuals who weren't enforcement priorities or who, had certain claims at the border, they will potentially be detained and apprehended at the border and will have to either face immediate removal under expedited removal provisions, or they will be held in custody until they actually go before an immigration judge. Now, of course, like I mentioned, the prosecution priorities and those enforcements, we no longer will basically have prosecutorial discretion. Before, under Obama, it gave us the privilege and opportunity to seek to either terminate certain cases or not have certain individuals detained. Now, basically, anyone can be a priority for enforcement. So even if you have a U.S. citizen family or children you're supporting, but you're undocumented, you will be targeted. Of course, anyone with any sort of crimes, even minor crimes, they're going to be targeted. This memo also is going to put in place additional Customs and Border Protection agents, CBP, and also additional Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents. So there's going to be a total of about 15,000 additional agents who are going to be out there basically apprehending anyone who's either arriving in the country or is already currently in the country. They're also expanding a law under 287G, which basically will allow local law enforcement to start acting like ICE agents. And they're going to be, whoever's apprehended basically by local law enforcement who would be a priority for immigration. Once you're fingerprinted, those individuals are going to be communicating with ICE, and there'll be detainers on those individuals, and ICE will make that call on whether they want to actually put those individuals into immediate removal proceedings or detain them into immigration detentions following their apprehension locally. Additionally, back to what I mentioned with expedited removal, certain categories of aliens previously were subject to expedited removals, those individuals who arrived within 14 days and 100 miles of the border. That's being expanded to include individuals who are already inside the country despite the 100-mile and 14-day policy. So essentially, ICE can pick up these individuals and CBP can pick up these individuals and basically expedite removal, meaning you don't have a right to a judge. They'll go ahead and process you out and deport you immediately, which is where the whole, there's no due process essentially for those individuals. And of course, a lot of these policies will depend on whether Congress is going to fund more judges, more agents, more asylum officers and judges sitting strictly at those border detention facilities to process these cases. Now, supposedly they're still going to deal with individuals and allow them in on a case-by-case if they have a credible fear of returning to their home country. So if they express fear, the right process basically is for them to allow you to have your case initially heard by an asylum officer, and then they kind of make that call of whether you're allowed to stay in the country or you're going to be subject to removal. These memorandums are effective immediately, so they were signed in. These memos were basically signed in by the Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly on February 17th, so this Friday. And some of the categories, of course, that they're strictest on are any security or criminal grounds for sure. So even if you have a minor criminal background, and even if you're a permanent resident, you're somebody that could be subject to this policy that was just recently signed. Individuals who are removal aliens can be those convicted, like I said, of criminal offenses, those who have been charged with any criminal offense but not yet been resolved. So if you have a pending criminal case, that's subject to you. If you committed acts that constitute a chargeable criminal offense, although if you're not even yet convicted, that's an individual who could be subject to. So not only just individuals who are undocumented or illegal, but even permanent residents with any sort of criminal background, you're going to be subject to that. They're going to crack down on any sort of fraud or misrepresentation in obtaining either immigration benefits or any sort of matters before a government agency which you committed fraud or misrepresented to obtain benefits. Those who have abused any sort of public benefits, and again, this can expand to permanent residents who basically were not supposed to obtain, let's say, Medicaid or food stamps, but they went ahead and did so. If there's any abuse of those and those people were not supposed to, they can go after those individuals. If you have a final order of removal, if you've never departed per your removal order, you're definitely a priority. More than likely, those individuals with a final order of removal will probably be subject to almost expedited removal since you initially already have a case that's had a final ruling upon it by an immigration judge. And of course, anyone and everyone who's a public safety or national security, from those undocumented to those that hold permanent residency, you will essentially be a priority for immigration as well. A couple other things, like I mentioned, these memos also are targeting families, mothers, children. So even if you have undocumented children, they're going to be strictly enforcing those to figure out if they actually still meet the unaccompanied child minor, unaccompanied alien child, or if they, so individuals who have a case pending supposedly are going to be covered. If you don't have any documentation whatsoever, you'll definitely be a target. It's still up in the air as to whether they'll be targeting these individuals at schools and places of sanctuary, such as churches. But really, under this administration, they are taking the law in full force. Whatever immigration laws have been in place, a lot of those became a little more laxed under the Obama administration, but Trump definitely wants to do whatever is in his powers within the immigration laws to adhere to strict enforcement of detaining and removing illegal and undocumented individuals and those who pose a security threat or have criminal backgrounds. So that's it for today. I'll try to follow up again on another live feed to kind of go over these memos a little more in detail, but this is what's been talked about initially as of Friday. We won't really know what's going to essentially go into effect until this thing is basically in full force, but they are effective immediately. If you do know of any individual who might benefit from some sort of immigration relief, now is the time to file those. So if you have family members, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, I mean, if you qualify for any sort of immigration benefit, now's the time to seek immigration counsel, find out what those benefits are if you qualify for anything, get something pending. Also, part of priorities are those individuals who have been in the country 2 years or less. Make sure if you've been here for over 2 years and you qualify for some sort of benefit, you're keeping paperwork on you at all times to show at least the physical presence for the last 2 years. And of course, if you have any pending applications, carry proof of that. But they're going to essentially target anyone and profile anyone and everyone for these sort of issues. And of course, Harris County is one of those jurisdictions that has signed and is cooperating with ICE in terms of apprehensions of anyone with a criminal background. So get those things resolved as soon as possible under underlying crimes if you have one. Right now, they're not going to be exercising a lot of discretion if you have a criminal background, even if it's minor. So the more history you have in the country, the more positive things such as tax filings and church ties, family ties, things like that. Those are going to help you benefit should you, of course, have an immigration case that can help you. That's it for today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach us at 832-792-3636. That's our Houston number. We also have a San Antonio office. The number there is 210-400-6111. I will have my paralegal follow up with a Spanish session to kind of address some of these issues for those who are Spanish speaking. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to call us at those numbers or visit our Facebook website at Rahgozar Law Firm PLLC. Thank you. You guys have a wonderful day.